I heard that. Mike always makes fun of me of these jeans because, like, normally when you have holy jeans, like, you see through them. And so, because these have, like, the pads behind them, Mike always comes up to me at work and he goes, "You have very long underwear." Is what is his constant joke with me because, yeah, I just wear long johns always, is what it boils down to. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, welcome to Refresh. We're gonna get things rolling. I was talking to Brett about this earlier, and I'm kind of in that weird barrier of being here long enough that I know a good many people, and especially those who've been coming for a while. And so when I came up, I was thinking like, do I need to get up there and go, hey, the same rigmarole. You just as a speaker, you kind of get in your head to constantly go, hey, my name's Seth Conn. I'm the campus of teaching pastor, blah 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 blah. But I was like, we're doing Refresh. These are leaders. I think you're in. Like I think you know who's you're in the know. So I'm not gonna like go down that road of acting like you're ignorant. Huh? Yes, exactly right. Who? Where are we? What is this church? I you know. But anyway, so Brett kind of came to me, asked me to get things started for the first few minutes before we do breakouts and whatnot. So I just kind of I kind of had some time before the Lord on your behalf and gotten the word and really just wanted to find something that was a word for you guys today. So I kind of prayerfully went into that. And we're going to be in Mark 10 for a few minutes. I'm only be up here with you about 15 minutes, so don't be thinking I'm going to be cruising for some 40-minute talk, right? It's just going to be a 15-minute quick deal. Yeah, all right, there you go. I see that hand. Yeah. But I do want us to dive in real briefly into Mark 10. So if you've got a Bible app on your phone or a Bible with you, love for you to be there with me. Going to be starting in verse 35, Mark 10, verse 35. And so what I'm looking at here today is I don't know if this is where you've been. So Paul talked a lot about perspective a couple of weeks ago. If you were in service, and uh, God like makes me marinate and stuff for a pretty good long ways. I don't know if you're that way at all, but He'll just get stuff that's heavy on me, and that perspective point has been something that's been pretty heavy on me. Is what is my perspective as I walk into things in life, and very much as it becomes more specifically with my walk with Christ. Perspective's been a big one for me. So I've been thinking about it a lot. Specifically, the thing that stood out to me the most has been that I need to have a perspective that every time I walk in these doors, that I'm on a mission. I don't know if you're anything like I am, but if I'm being very real with you, I can become a consumer very fast, and I will throw aside my responsibilities of a disciple and disciple maker and being a servant for the Lord, which should be paramount. And I can let that consumerism, that Christian consumerism, manifest in my heart pretty quick. You might not be that way. That might not be a struggle of yours, but I have a feeling more of us than not, that's a natural default we can find ourselves in, is that we can become this, okay, I'm coming to church today on Sunday morning. Yeah, I'm going to check off the list that I went and did my little service thing or whatever it was. Or for so many of you that are leaders, I'm going to check off that I sent my emails out, that I sent my text messages out, that I know I've got my people in place. I'm good. But when it comes to getting there, we can really, and this is kind of where that whole going beyond the motions things came into effect. We can just kind of get into the normal rigmarole. We can kind of just go through those motions. And that perspective can be lost. And one thing God's been challenging me about is to not walk into church and go, what's the word I'm going to receive? What's the worship I want to experience? And the movement I want to feel stir within me? And he's been challenging me to kind of turn it around. And obviously, some of you are probably thinking, you're a pastor, that shouldn't be that difficult. But for me, if I'm being real, there's times that you just get into the routine. And so he's been challenging me to, even as I walk into services, to look for people who look lost or look like they're not engaged, or maybe it's their first time, and go, hey, why don't you come sit next to me and my wife, or like stuff like that. And that's not very natural for me. It's very natural for my wife. A lot of times people think that I'm an extrovert just because I can be real goofy and over the top, but that isn't technically even what an extrovert is, right? It's kind of where you get your energy from. And so when it comes to me, a lot of times I tend to be a little bit more introverted. And so my natural affinity isn't to walk up to somebody I just don't know and be like, tell me everything about you. It's the most awesome thing to me right now. Like, that's just not how I'm wired. And so if you see me do that, it's because I'm forcing myself to do that. Not because I don't want to, because it's just not naturally how I'm wired. And so I want to be good about that. My wife's great about it. She naturally is good at that. But I want to be challenged in that regard. So that perspective of being on mission. And so the kind of one statement I've got for you tonight is this, is we need regular accountability to maintain a perspective on mission. So, I mean, anything else, you can write down the references or anything. I'm going to have some points, but that's the big one right there. We need regular accountability to maintain a perspective on mission in our lives. I need that. And as I assess that desire to be missional and to be on mission and to have that perspective, I realized that I wasn't enough. That Seth just waking up every day and going, I need to be on mission, I need to have that perspective, I realized real quick I fell back to my normal habits. And I realized I need accountability. And as we're going to see in Mark 10, starting in verse 35, I'm not alone in that. We're not alone in that. The disciples are very much people who fall prey to that as well. So the kind of title of this little bit segment is Having the Perspective of One Who Serves. And so obviously tonight we're talking all about being a servant leader, leading those who serve. And it's in vast number of different contexts for everybody in here, depending on what area you're leaning into and providing leadership for. But it's having a perspective of one who serves. So Mark 10:35 says this, Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. Namely, they came to Jesus. They say, Teacher, they said, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. Great thing to ask of Jesus right out front with no context. Not presumptuous whatsoever. Can I just say I love the disciples because they say dumb stuff like I feel like I would have said to Jesus. Like I feel like so many times I would have walked up to Jesus and said stuff, and Jesus had been like, you got a long way to go, Seth. Like, yeah. So he comes up to these, and keep in mind, these are like three of the inner circle as well. It's Peter, James, and John. So these are supposedly the creme de la creme of the disciples. So what do you want me to do for you, he asked. They replied, let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory. So namely, when you go to heaven, forget the rest of the disciples, but kind of if you could make us kind of chief, that'd be top. That'd be pretty top notch. So you don't know what you were asking, Jesus said. Can you drink the cup I drink or be baptized with the baptism I baptize with? If they weren't being presumptuous enough, they go, we can. They answered, we absolutely can do that. So Jesus said to them, well, you will drink the cup I drink and be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with, but to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared. So the first little point that I'm drawn from that is this. Watch out for perspective shifts in your life. Watch out preemptively for perspective shifts in your life. These disciples are guys who are going around. They're serving alongside Jesus. They're in submission to him in so many ways. They're doing so many sacrificial things. They're seeing him do all these miracles. They are supposed to be the guys who get it more than anybody else. But for whatever reason, in this moment, and it seems so obvious to you and I when we read it aloud, but for them it wasn't. But they got real selfish, real them-focused, real quick. It wasn't about the kingdom of God. It wasn't about bringing forward the gospel to people. It wasn't about this good news of the Messiah who had come. They made it very viscerally, very really about them. And I imagine that wasn't something that happened overnight. There's a perspective shift. I mean, they know they're the inner circle. It's Peter, James, and John. They're like sitting there, and they know we're kind of the guys. And so we already know we're kind of in Jesus' inner circle. So let's kind of take a step further and ask of him what we think we probably deserve. We've done a lot for Jesus. We've served with him. Can we just kind of put our agenda forward and go, I think we deserve this. Yeah, we can be baptized with that. We can do that. Haven't we proved that to you already? So what's in it for us? And I think the sad part of that is, I think we can all agree, they didn't mean wickedness by that. They didn't have an intention that was wicked or sinful in that moment. They're walking into this going completely oblivious to the heart attitude that this is conveying. So in that, we see that we need to watch out for our perspective shifts. Verse 41 says this, though. very next thing, and this is where it gets kind of ugly. It says, when the 10 heard about this, namely about the other 2, in reference to the 12 overarchingly, when the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. Namely, they were very frustrated, angry. Like, how presumptuous of them to go before Jesus, not consult them, not talk to them, and go, hey, they're all great, but could you make us the greatest? Can we sit at your right and your left? And you see an issue occur, and it's the second little point I got for you. It's this. So the first one was watch out for perspective shifts. The second one is simply this. Improper perspective creates division. Improper perspective creates division. Whenever we don't even if we mean well, even if our heart isn't meaning wickedness, if our heart gets out of perspective, out of whack, what occurs is that division follows right after it. Because when we make it about us, we don't make it about other people, and guess what they feel? Burned. They feel affected by that. They certainly don't feel the love of Christ. That's for darn sure. And so in this moment, we see the other disciples, really feeling this. So let's keep reading the last little section here. So Jesus called them together and said, you know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man, speaking of himself, did not come to be served, but to serve, and then if that wasn't enough, and to give his life as a ransom for many. And so Jesus in this moment does one of those ultimate Jesus jukes. At the very end, you see at the beginning, they've got a perspective shift that's wrong. It causes division amongst the disciples to the point Jesus has to step in and intervene. And he kind of has a teaching moment, which unfortunately is a pretty public, speaking up against where their hearts were. And he goes, look, you're missing it. If at any point you make it about you, you're out of alignment. If you want to be the leader, if you want to be the big deal, it's always service. It's never anything else. And he goes, you want to know what I am? I'm Jesus, and I'm the ultimate servant. And you want to know what I did? I came down to serve unto death. And I recognize that for me, this didn't end any other way than death. Because that's the ultimate act of service that he was called to do, obviously, for us. To offer himself as a ransom and a sacrifice for us. And so the final one is proper perspective requires proper accountability. In that moment, thankfully, Jesus stepped in and was accountability for those guys. Because here's the deal, we're not Jesus. Jesus didn't need personal, individual himself. But he was, God made flesh. He's cruising straight forward through. But you and I, we're disciples. We're right there with all of them. And we're struggling with it. We're struggling with jealousy like the other 10 were. And we're struggling with making it about us like the other 2 were at any given moment. But the accountability of those in their life. And so for you today, I want 2 things for you. And I hope this hits you on both sides. One is, don't let your perspective as a leader ever shift to anything other than being a servant. That's all we're called to do. And the moment that it becomes something else, you've got some rough stuff you're going to wade through. It's just going to happen. You're either going to cause division amongst your teams. Your leadership's not going to be very effective. People may just simply not respect you anymore in a way that they should, right? There's so many different ways that could happen. But let me turn it the other way as well. Make sure as a leader, just as Christ did, we are being accountability to those we have been given the care of leading. In those lives, if you see that in your teams and in what's going on, and they've lost sight of what it means to serve, and there is a me mentality, and this is a hurt. Well, what about me, and what about the thing that I want, and this just doesn't feel comfortable for me the way I and me and my and me and blah. Brian Regan is a comedian. Is real funny. He talks about the me monster. If you've ever heard one of his comedic stand-ups, and he just goes on about these people who just can't talk enough about themselves, and nobody wants to be in that kind of context. So we want to make sure we are being leaders, not only who are serving, but who are being accountability to those who we are leading. And so that was so we need we need regular accountability to maintain a perspective that is on mission. So that's the kind of the heart that I want to just convey to you in this short little bit of time that I had with you today. It's just a little vision cast, just a quick moment. Maybe for you, maybe this was that Jesus moment of accountability where you're like, wow, I needed that shakeup. I needed that reminder. Maybe for you, you're walking through a situation in your ministry where you've got people who find themselves in this context. And maybe you need to step in and in love, and don't be a jerk about it, right? Don't be in and be like, hey, you're selfish and awful. Like, maybe you could be better. That'd be great. Like, that's probably not the greatest, route, just so we're clear. But to do it in love and to speak it in a way that brings peace and brings accountability in their life, because you aren't just an organizational leader. Far more importantly, you're a spiritual leader. And that's the reason we have you in these positions, is because we see that in you. And if we didn't see you first as a spiritual leader, we wouldn't allow you to be an organizational leader. And I hope you realize that, and there's weightiness to that. And hopefully it's a big compliment too. So thank you for your service. Thank you for leading the teams that you do. I want to wrap with a couple of kind of cool facts for you. I asked Brett to kind of get some of these facts together to kind of give you as maybe an encouragement even of what it means to see kind of the overall picture. We don't really get to share these kind of things with just the church at large, but I love to share these kind of moments with leadership and just to hear what God's doing in the life of our church. So I'd love to share these with you. So the first statistics are all year-to-date statistics up until and including Friend Day. So these are fun ones for you. First-time guests this year since January 1st, 327 first-time guests to first time ever interact with Metro. First time ever. And I can tell you that it's first time ever because our records go back to like the church was founded. Like, yeah, we've got them so far back ones. And so it's 327. Second time guests, 157. Third time guests, 116. This one's the one that matters, though, and this is the one that's pretty cool. Now, this isn't to say that we were able to follow through with all of these and see that they met with us, and we know that they did, in fact, make a decision. But individuals who marked on their card that they wanted to know more about accepting Jesus Christ as their Savior and follow through, this is a staggering one. Year to date, people, year ain't over yet. 116 people. Is that not crazy? Yeah. I hope that gives you chills like it gives me chills. And every little thing that you do feeds into that, whether you feel it or not. Every bit of it makes that experience in a place and sets people up in an environment where they feel loved and consequently receptive to hear about the love that was ultimately sacrificed on their behalf. And so 116, which is pretty amazing. Friend Day alone, this is a cool one. Friend Day alone, 45 first-time guests and 12 people saying that they wanted to accept Jesus Christ as their Savior. That's just on Friend Day. Here's some Adventureland ones that it was a cool one. 333 first-time kids year to date. Is that not awesome? 333. That's more than there were even adults. 333 kids first time in Adventureland. And so I want to read you a few response cards as well, because we get you don't get to see these. I get to see these every week, and I get super hype about them. So I'm excited to read a couple of these. Are people who they're first-time guests at things, and we get them to give us some response. Like, hey, why'd you like it? Did you like it? Do you hate us? Like, what is the deal, right? And so here's some cool ones. We were invited by our sister. What did you notice first about the campus? The welcoming feel and great communications. What did you like best? The entire experience was a very good one. We felt comfortable off the bat. Both of our children went to Adventureland program. They were 4 and 12 years of age, and both loved it, which is rare for our toddler. Everyone was friendly, staffed well, great signage and process, right? That's how specific they were about this. Literally the systems by which you feed into made a huge impact on these people and their engagement therein. What most influenced, so this isn't someone else. What most influenced, wait, no, I want to make sure I did. Yeah, okay, move now. How did you hear about Metro that led you to attend? I actually was interviewing for a position at your church and was invited to attend. I hear about you guys from a friend, though, initially. It's very nice, clean, and trendy. That was the things that they noticed about the campus. What'd you like best? I liked how everyone was very nice and inviting. The church seemed to have making guests feel comfortable a priority. Um, I felt like God was calling me to hear this particular message at the church today. No idea what the topic was going to be, but felt I should be there. The message was good for me, but absolutely awesome for my girlfriend. So that's another individual talking about it. I love the fact that I was welcomed by someone post-service, and he remembered my name as I was walking out the door. So literally took that extra step to remember the person's name. He said, "You guys are just doing a really great job." My son would ask us every week if we were coming back. That was one. He's 8 years old, and he had a really great time. So that's a great one. Friendly atmosphere stood out to them as well. Here's another one. My son Trevor has been going for a long time. It's a very nice campus. I've been twice, Easter and yesterday's service. I love both services and can't wait to come back. I've never felt like that before attending any other church. I loved everything about it, the band, the pastor, the message, etc. Religion can be confusing, and I was able to understand the message, which is so important to me now, if only I can make it through without crying. Clean and inviting was the next one that I saw. Clean. It means, like, I know that we say that a lot from stage, that people prioritize that in reference to so many people own that and are helping and serving, but literally the cleanliness stands out to these people. The atmosphere was awesome. The music and lights and technology was wonderful. Keep doing what you're doing. The enormous, this is one, I love this. What did you notice first about the campus? The enormous amount of love and true compassion. That's a big statement right there of just somebody walking into a building. What did you like best? Well, the coffee was good, but I do like a good sermon. Looking forward to hearing more. Do you have any suggestions? So this was like going into service. Do you have any suggestions? No, all caps, just intense. Keep loving people and making them feel special. I'll read a couple more and I'll be done. I really enjoyed the first service I attended. I would have been to the service on the previous Sunday if I was able to connect with some family that I have in St. George, blah, blah, blah. So I went to meet them. It was a great experience. I enjoy how you have themes for your worship service. The service I was able to attend on time really hit home for me. Yes, everyone is very friendly. The music is awesome, and the service is relatable and fun. The first thing I noticed is another one. Visually was the beautiful building, but the first thing I noticed spiritually was God's presence. Amazing worship and great word. I just loved everything and the encouraging environment. So many things. And the beauty that I love about this is a lot of times we assume that when we look at those, the only thing you're going to see on cards like that is, because if we think churchy mind, is worship and or sermon. We just assume those are going to be the two big ones that people hit, and every time it's going to be it. But I'm going to tell you, that is not the mass majority of what we get. It definitely is there, and it's definitely present in many. But the ones that we see at least half, if not more of, are going to be those who give those very bizarrely specific things. Man, it was clean. The people were friendly. They remembered my name. I felt welcome. My kids loved Adventureland, and they won't let me stay home. They keep bringing me back. And so much of that is only because of everything you do. And so I want to tell you thank you. Your service and what you do is not overseen. It is not overlooked. It is not something that is forgotten, and it makes all the difference in the world. So from the deepest bottom of my heart, at least, and I know from the rest of our team, those who are here and those who aren't, thank you so much. You are loved and appreciated. So, Brett, I'm going to turn it over to you, buddy.
Thanks, Seth. All right, we are going to let those of you in Adventureland go to your breakout, and the rest of you who are my people, you will stay around here. And you guys who are on my team, you might want to move here closer. Teresa is going to come up at the end and do some things up here on this screen, so you might want to get where you can see that a little easier. Am I sounding super loud? No? Okay. Since Seth hit his 15 minutes right on the mark, I will rush through this. So I just want to pull out a little bit. You have this green sheet on your table. I have another one I'm going to hand you here in just a second. But for those of you who were here back in the spring, Pastor Paul talked about this. And so we were talking about, we want to disciple the people that are on our teams. Okay, and we're going to talk about a little bit about what that means. And so this was just a little visual to see, and they go by different levels, level 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is just one way. There's many different ways to categorize where people are at spiritually, but this is just one way that we were using. So we're going to talk about tonight, what are some ways that we can partner with God to help our people to move through this continuum. All right, and that's what I want you to hear when I say that. You're partnering with God, okay? So this is not something where you have to feel ownership that, oh my gosh, the people on my team, they're not moving as quickly. That's not on you, okay? That's on the Holy Spirit, and that's on them to respond to what the Holy Spirit is prompting them to do. So all we're talking about tonight are what are some of the things that you individually as the leader, as the coach, what are some things that you can do to encourage them to take some of those steps? Because unfortunately, the research that's out there shows that most people in churches in America, they're not growing spiritually. Around here at Metro, we like to use that word, taking next steps. They're not taking their next spiritual steps. And one of the reasons that they say that that happens a lot, or this particular research that I was looking at says that happens, is because we're asking them, or a lot of churches, not Metro, we do a really good job, and that's what I'm trying to point out to you here, is a lot of churches, they ask them to get involved and to go do something, but they don't give them any kind of direction or an idea of where they're supposed to be headed. Most churches take this philosophy of, we'll just give them a menu. Okay, we have all of these services and all of these groups and all of these classes and all of these opportunities to serve and all of these different events, and they just say, you know what, they're all really, really good. Pick one. And maybe if you're really going to do good, pick a couple of them. And so the people, they don't really know, what is my ultimate destination? Where am I supposed to be going with this? What's the logical progression? So that's what I'm trying to do here tonight, is to give us a little bit of a map instead of a menu as to where these guys are, where we want to take them. Because that ultimate destination is spiritual maturity. So the goal is for them to be transformed into the likeness of Jesus. And that transformation, it takes a little bit of work, okay? It takes a long time, and it's a gradual death to self, to sin, and sometimes even to society, the pull of the world around us. And so as we do that, we become more and more and more holy. Not holy in terms of, oh, I'm perfect now, but holy in terms of being fully surrendered to Jesus. So our goal is to kind of help our team, our people on our team, in that process. What can we do to partner with them? Because that's what Jesus said. In Matthew 28, 19, and 20, the Great Commission, when he tells us to go and make disciples of all the nations and baptizing them in the name of their Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. And part of that, then he says, the next verse in 20, he says, teach these new disciples to obey the commands that I have given you. So he's not saying, go teach them this is what you should do, okay? Because we don't know what they're responding to Jesus. Everybody's a little bit different. We don't know what Jesus is asking them to do, but what we're teaching them is we're teaching them to obey. We're teaching them what it looks like to respond when Jesus prompts us to do something. So that's what I wanted to pull out tonight with you guys, because I think if we have a good strategy, if we kind of look at it intentionally and intelligently, then that's going to give us a lot more clarity on how we can cooperate with God in the process. Okay, so if these are the 4 levels, the 4 stages on this side, if you kind of flip it around to the back, this is where it kind of gets into, okay, what are some of the things that the people need at these different levels? Okay, what are they needing to move from level 1 to level 2 to level 3 to level 4? And how does that process happen? So some questions that we can ask. I kind of broke this down in terms of, okay, at Metro, what are we trying to accomplish? What are we trying to get them to do? So kind of in that first section there, that level 1 section there, as they are making that decision, like Seth talked about, when they're marking the card and say, yes, I want to accept Jesus as my Savior. So we're helping the community around us become part of our Metro crowd. So we want to bring in the new guests. We want to bring in people. We want them to experience everything that we have here, so they can kind of say, wow, sometimes they can't even put the word to it. They're like, I don't really know what's going on, but there's something going on there, and I just got to come back. I got to keep coming back to see what happens. And then after a while, number 2, then we want to help that crowd that gathers on the weekend become active participants in Metro. So now we want them to realize, hey, there's more to it than just me coming and sitting in a chair on the weekends for an hour and 15 minutes. There's some more things that I can take part in. Next, we want to help the ones that are already plugged in, the ones that are doing some of those things, to remain committed to growing spiritually. Because we all have a tendency to drift. We all have a tendency when life comes our way to kind of slow fade. And so we want to try to do things to encourage them to commit, to continue to grow spiritually. Then we want to move the committed believers into ministry to help them start investing their time and their talent to serve others. Okay, now some of this here, like he's like, well, does that mean that a person who first shows up, that they can't serve? No, some people are doing that. Some people, they come, they attend Metro for a little while, and they plug right into service. But what we're talking about here is them tapping into, okay, what are my actual spiritual gifts? All right, because I'm doing this, I'm serving on this team, but, is that really what God designed me for? Is that what my ultimate mission and purpose is? So we want people to start asking those questions and explore, okay, how do I do what God made me to do? Because you might have a person, I'm going to pick on the greeters, you might have a person outside who's greeting, and that's just how they plugged in. That's kind of, we call some of those first impressions kind of our on-ramp ministries, because it's really simple for people to get plugged in on those. But you might see somebody on your team that whenever the little kids are coming up, they're a completely different person. They just kind of change, and they just really interact with those kids. That person should be in Adventureland. That person should not be greeting outside. That person should be in an opportunity to connect on a deeper level with those kids. So it might be, as we go through this, an opportunity where you see, you know what, this person may need to explore some of those talents and abilities that they have, and I may need to be willing to let them go on to another ministry. And then finally, the last one then is we're going to help people glorify God in every aspect of their lives. Okay, so they're firing on all cylinders there. So what we want to do then is we want to provide them with this map, okay, a clear picture of what the goal is. What kind of believers are we hoping to produce? If somebody has been plugged in and they've been here part of our Metro family for a couple of years, what are the knowledges? What are the perspectives? What are the skills that we want our people to have? Okay, so then once we know that goal, then we can kind of list out the steps to make it clear to them. All right, and so the important thing is we want that to be just as easy for somebody who has no background whatsoever in church before. Okay, we don't want it to be this kind of situation, if you've grown up in church, you kind of understand what the natural progression is. You kind of understand what it looks like to do church, okay? But we want the people that have never been here before to understand, okay, I want to take a next step. What does that mean? What does that look like? So, Sadie, can you grab that and pass those out? So what I did was this, and please understand this is a work in progress, okay? So I'm not saying that this is the end-all, be-all, and I am totally hoping that you guys, as you experience and walk through some of these things, that we can kind of together work on some of these things. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to come up with what are some, and I called them milestones because I couldn't really think of what to do. But you kind of think, I was thinking in terms of like kids, as your kids grow, they hit certain milestones, usually like the pediatricians call them milestones. You know, they crawl and then they walk and then all these different kinds of things. All right, so I want to know, what are some of those milestones that every single person on our team can meet? What are the steps? What are those next steps? What are the things that we can ask them to do? Okay, and again, remember, we can only ask and we can only partner with God, but He is doing the work in them that's going to be carrying them through these different steps. Okay, and the other thing to understand here is most of these on the list, they don't have anything to do with the actual task. All right, so we're not talking about actual tasks on your ministry team. What we're talking about are these spiritual steps. The steps as they're taking them and they're moving closer to, as with our mission statement says, closer to God, each other, and the disconnected. Okay, so this starts off probably the very first thing that you do, the first time you have any kind of interaction with somebody on your team, it's going to be through some type of an orientation. Okay, so you as the coach or as the team leader, you're going to meet with this new volunteer who now is your disciple, okay? And you're going to kind of talk to them how they can become part of your ministry team. What does it look like to be on my particular team? What are responsibilities that we have when we serve? All right, so you would start off with the how. So you're going to tell them, this is the methods, this is the procedures, this is our SOP, our standard operating procedure, this is what we do, okay? But it moves on then to the what and the why, because those are vitally more important. So the what and the why is the mission. What's the reason why we do this? What's the purpose for our ministry? Okay, I'm going to pick on the ushers here for just a second. All right, so we hand a program. We put a pin on a program, and we hand the program to a person, okay? That's the task. We could just as easily put the programs with the pins on them and leave them on the table, and people are going to pick them up off the table as they walk in. So what is that? It's obviously not to hand somebody a program, okay? But what it is we are allowing that person to have another contact with a person who is saying, hey, welcome to Metro. So glad you're here. Hope you enjoy the service. You have no idea what people are coming to when they walk into this building. You have no idea what their week has looked like. For some moms, you know, this hour and 15 minutes, that may be the first time this week that they got a chance to breathe. Okay, they drop their kids off. No one is going to call my name for the next hour and 15 minutes. You know, I can breathe. They cherish that. Yes. Eric's like, I know exactly what that's like. Okay. So people, you have no idea what kind of hurt they're coming in here with. And they see those faces. They see those smiling faces in our greeters and our ushers and the people that help them find a seat on Sunday morning. Okay. And it changes their countenance. You can literally see their face change. Okay. That's the why. Because then once that changes, now their heart, instead of kind of being closed, now it's open. And then they can really take in everything that's going on in the service. So that's why we do that. So part of that ministry orientation is getting them to understand the why. Okay, this is what we do, but this is why we do it, and helping them to see that. And the other thing you want to do is you're going to help them to understand that, hey, I want to be more than just a person who sends you an email in the middle of the week and say, hey, it's our turn to serve. Okay, I want to be a person who has a relationship with you. I'd like to connect with you on another level as much as you would allow me, and I would like to kind of partner with you as you go through this process, because I think you're going to see that as you serve, there's just something special that God does in somebody when they surrender and they say, okay, I want to serve. That God can't do. He really can't do it unless they're in that heart position of serving. You know, somebody who's just coming on the weekends, or somebody who's just coming on the weekends and just comes to small group, I think there's a completely different component to the experience when they start to serve. And so you kind of get that across to them. Okay, the second one then is, this is when you kind of, I don't know what to really call it, but spiritual needs assessment. So you're going to start to spend some time with your people. And the conversations are going to be centered on faith. So this could be chats while you're serving, okay? You're alongside them, you're just kind of talking about life. It could be 5-minute coffee conversations like, hey man, we haven't caught up in a long time, you want to grab, why don't you come 5 minutes early for the service? We can have coffee and we can kind of see what's going on. Could even be like electronic communication. Could be emails and Facebook. I would recommend that, like Facebook friend the people that are on your team. That's a great way to keep up with their birthdays and what's going on with their families and that kind of stuff. Now, that's probably not ideal if that's the only way that you communicate with them. At some point, it should probably transition to kind of face-to-face things. But, the social media conversations, if you're having them versus not communicating at all, that's definitely a good thing. But as you grow closer to them and you get to know them and you kind of build that relationship, then you kind of get that emotional currency to kind of feel out, where are they? Okay? Where are they on this, the quadrants? Have they crossed that line of faith yet? Or are they somewhere else on here? And so what you can do, the thing that can trigger there, is for you to invite them to come experience the M1 class. And the great thing about that is if you aren't sure where they are spiritually, they are going to get the gospel presented to them in the M1 class. Whether it's Pastor Paul or Seth or whichever pastor leads that M1 class, they are going to present the gospel to them. Okay? And then the even better thing is then there is a follow-up meeting where it's just a one-on-one. One of the pastors on staff or one of our other high-level leaders is going to sit down with them on one-on-one or sometimes one-on-two if it's a husband and wife if they attend together. And they're going to have that conversation, and they're going to get asked that question, where are you spiritually? And there's going to be an opportunity for them to pray to accept Christ right then. Just think about that. For you just inviting someone on your team, say, hey, notice you hadn't taken M1 yet. Would you like to, there's an M1 class coming up this next week, and you should check that out. Can you imagine that, just that simple question triggering that process that they come to accept Jesus? So that's what you can do there at that one. Then the next one, the spiritual needs assessment number 2. So now you're continuing, the relationship is developing, you're having some more of these faith conversations. And so then you start to talk about, okay, what do the spiritual disciplines look like for you? How do you connect with God? When do you pray? When do you read the Bible? That kind of stuff. Or maybe you talk about, God's really been, kind of like Seth has. God's had me in the book of Mark, and, he's really been showing me this. And so you kind of start those conversations. And as it comes out, maybe you find out, they're like, well, yeah, I don't do that as much as I should. I'm not really, I don't really know how to read my Bible, or I've always had a difficulty doing that. That's when you can very easily transition and invite them into one of our classes. So our M2 classes is all about the spiritual disciplines. How to do devotion, how to read the Bible. Okay, what do some of those spiritual disciplines look like? What are some practical ways that you can, applications to do those different things? So you invite them in there. Or maybe in that conversation, something comes out and you realize, like, this person has hurt. They've gone through some kind of loss, or there's something that's there. Or maybe it's just a struggle with some type of addiction or something that is just, it's really sapping their spiritual energy. And they're having trouble dealing with that on your own. That's what the M3 is for. Pastor Gary does a great job with that, is how do we handle the challenges that come up in life? And then as we kind of get there, so then as you're moving through that, then as you kind of transition into number 4 here, that's where our M4 comes in, because our M4 is now, okay, how do I disciple somebody? What does it look like when I start to lead somebody else in the process? I understand what this looks like for me, but how do I lead somebody else? So that's where the M4 comes in. And so that then moves into the 4th step, which is mentoring and recruiting. So then as you start to continue these conversations, now you start to talk to them and encouraging them to, you should bring somebody else along. Maybe that's investing in inviting and bringing someone to Metro, encouraging them to invite and bring somebody to Metro, telling your story. Or maybe it's bringing somebody into the ministry. Maybe there's people that they interact with in their small group or other places that, they aren't serving. And so they can talk about what God is doing in their life as they serve. And so they can bring them in there. And so you're kind of helping them with that recruiting. And in a practical sense, that helps you as well. Because we constantly need new people. Turnover in our ministries, we need more people. Think of how much easier it is if you think, man, I need to get, 5 new people on my team. Or I can have my people who are already here invite 5 people to come with them. It's much easier. So you kind of have those conversations there where they kind of share how God is using them and impacting them. Okay, so then for the last couple here, important distinction here. You have to know kind of where your people are. God doesn't call everybody into the higher level leadership areas. Okay, there may be people on your team that is their sweet spot. Is they are here to serve on your team. They are doing an awesome job there, and they really don't have any aspirations to move into kind of any area of leadership, and possibly that skill set may be lacking right there. So I don't want you to think that the next two have to happen. You really have to kind of see, we don't want them to step out of who they are in Jesus. But there are some of those people where you can see they just have, I like to call it spiritual momentum. All right? You can see that they are moving. God is doing stuff in their life, and they are just eager to, what's my next step? What's my next step? What's my next step? And they are just moving. At that point, this might be a person who you might want to advance into being your apprentice. So an apprentice means you are just going to bring them alongside you as you do your ministry and basically just teach them everything that you know. Say, this is how I do it. Okay, this is what it looks like. And so as you kind of bring them along, you can kind of show them, and then you can give them some responsibilities. Maybe there's a particular task in your ministry. You can allow them to take ownership of that task. So that's kind of what the apprenticing looks like. This normally is going to start off with, we also have talked in past refreshers about these I, see, and you conversations, where you sit down with them and you're like, you know what, as I see you kind of, serving every weekend, I really see that God is working on you and using you in this area, and I would love to, bring you alongside me and maybe have you show me some of what those things are that you know how to do, and let me teach you a little bit of stuff. Those kind of things. And then this also, kind of like I mentioned before, this might also be an opportunity where we have, and I'll put a little plug in for it, we are having an M5 class. It is November the 4th. You'll find it in your program. Shirley put it in there today. All right. And so it's an opportunity to explore, what are my spiritual gifts? All right, am I in the place where God has created me to be? What are my passions? What are the giftings and the talents that I have? So it might be an opportunity where they explore that, to kind of see, okay, am I in the best place for me? And then as you kind of do that, as you kind of lead them along, you're having them in that process, the process that we use here, the kind of I do, you watch, we talk kind of thing. As you slowly bring them along. Okay, and then it's progressing to ownership of something in the ministry. All right, we don't want to just have an apprentice just in name only. It's like, who's my apprentice? Oh yeah, I need an apprentice. Okay, you're my apprentice. No, we want them to actually be fulfilling the role of the apprentice. And so then at that point, then at some point, we want to release them into leadership. So if they've been your apprentice for a while and they are able, then we want to allow them to take over. Let them become the leader. Let them become, maybe that frees you up to move to another area that you feel called to. Or as we begin to start our new campuses, maybe you're releasing them and they're going to go do this at the next metro campus, wherever it may be. Or maybe you want to go to that next campus, and then they can slide right in with a seamless transition here, so that we're not left with no one here. And then finally, kind of the last step, as this all comes full circle, is when you start to see this person that you discipled, now they are repeating that same process with somebody else. So that's kind of like what Paul talked about this weekend. That's when you truly become a hero maker. All right, because now your disciples are making disciples. And so you are basically the next level and the next level and the next level, and it grows from there. So that's what I wanted to show you, was just some of these steps, things that we can do as leaders, as ministry coaches, to encourage our people, the next steps that they can take. And just keep in mind, okay, understand, you can't force this. This process is going to be slow, okay? It's going to happen over a long period of time. It's not like, well, we need everybody to get to step 4 by the end of 2019. It doesn't work like that. Okay? You got to work at their pace. Okay, so as they are responding to God, as they are being obedient, all you're doing is kind of acting as the cheerleader. You're kind of encouraging them along. Where are you at? How's it going? What's the next step that you need to take? Okay. So, what that may have generated for you are some questions like, well, how do I know who on my team has taken the different M classes and that kind of stuff? And so that is where Miss Teresa, this is Teresa King. She's going to come forward. Teresa is our office manager, and she is going to give you a little bit of a tutorial with our system, our ACS system, which is our database. And she's going to show you how you can very easily get all of this information in a few simple little clicks. Well, I probably muted you at the back. I'll have to go unmute you.
So I know it's late to kind of learn something new, because I don't know about you, but my brain's already turned off because I've been going for a long time. Can you guys see? So I'm gonna try to. He keeps moving it so that we can't. So I'm kidding. So I am the office manager. Oh, you've got me muted.
I'm going to go flick you on. Yeah. I had to change seasons.
Okay. All right, now, am I on now? Can you guys see me? Okay. So anyway, I'm the keeper of the database. That's one of my many jobs. And so I'm just going to show you, how many of you get into ACS at all to see things? Okay. Good. Some of you do, and some of you that don't, I'm going to kind of give you a quick way to get in. You basically just go to our website. So we will kind of just go through this real quick. Okay, Brett. Okay, so this is our website. So you scroll all the way to the bottom, and you may think, am I ever going to get there? Yes, you will. And down at the very bottom right here, it says ACS login. And if you have a login already, you click down here. If you don't, you have to fill out this right here, and then this comes to me, and then I have to okay that you can get in to our system. So we're going to click here, and I'm going to pretend to be Brett, because we've discovered mine's too crazy. What I see, you will go, what? So when you open it up, this is what will come up. And on this side will be your teams. Brett has everybody because he is. The small group, not unless they're a leader. If you're not a small group leader, you won't. So that's on this side. And so we're just going to, anything that's highlighted or underlined means you can click on it. So we're just going to pick one here and just pretend this is your team. And Brett is in all of them because he's the master. And you will see the leader and then the participants. Anything underlined, again, is a link. So if you want to know more about this person, we're going to look at Brett, and we're going to figure out what's going on with Brett. So if you double click, you get his address and some information about him. And if you want to go more, you go view more. And it takes a while because it has to load all of our data. And we're at Metro, yes. At my home, it runs super fast. So here is the same thing you just saw on the previous page. You can see his cell number, his home number, emails, and address. So to get into the nitty-gritty, you get a personal information right here. And this is where everything is that's in our real database, it comes over. So you can see over here, you can see their birthday. Some people like it, some people don't. And you can see that he's married. You can see that he's a member. It says member status. He's a member. When he became a member, how he became a member. And then over here, you can see that he attends the Edwardsville campus. He's been to M1. He's been to M2. We have no baptism date for him. I don't know. M3, M4, and then when he first came to Metro, and his third time, and then the date that he took M1. And we only go back, some of these fields are new, and they didn't make me go all the way back to the beginning of time. They just like, go the last 5 years and fill them in. Because I would still be doing it if they made me do it. So this is how you get the information on if they've been to M1, are they even a member? Because I know sometimes Brett will ask, are your people members? Because this is where you go, we need to ask them about M1. Because you can see he's not a member. And then from there you can see, they haven't been to M2, M3, M4. And so this is how you see it. Under groups. Yes. This is Brett's family. After you turn the age of 18, you become your own household. And so that's why his other 2 children are not in here. Because he was asking me, where's my other kids? And they're underlined, so you can click on them and you can see information on them as well. If you want to see if these participants are in a group or where they're serving besides your ministry, if you click on groups, you can see that. At some point in time, Brett was in Adventureland, and he was in KBK, and he did adult Bible study. And then down here, you'll be able to see where they're serving, and if they're in a small group, it usually shows up here as well. So you can see those 2 things, and it'll have a date out here of no, it doesn't. I was going to say it shows when they last attended, but it doesn't on yours. It does on mine, but not on this one. Yes. So anyway, we just wanted to kind of give you this so you can have some extra tools to see where the information is that we're asking you to look for. And so Brett was gracious enough to let me come in. You're the first group that I've got to tell this to. The small group leaders, I've been doing them on the phone one by one, so it's great to have a bunch of people to do it at once. That's a lot more effective than one by one. So thank you very much. If you have any questions or you forget this, just call me. We can do it over the phone. It's no big deal. So I hope that helps. Any questions? Nope. Good.
I'm going to show you one more thing on there. I know a lot of you already do this, but while we have it open, if you want to contact all of your people.
Oh, sorry, I forgot.
No, you're fine. So let's say I want to send my weekly email. And now there are some, if you could just as easily export all these things. Let's say I want the atrium cleaning team. So I'm going to send them an email about something. So what I can do is I can go over here to I want to, and I'm going to say send a message. And then you got to make sure that you check everybody like that. And then I say go. And then right here I can simply type an email and send it. The only thing I don't like about this is you can't send attachments. So if you wanted to send them a schedule or something, what you could do instead is if you just hit export, it'll export all of the information in here into an Excel spreadsheet. So then you can copy and paste it into Gmail or whatever system you use. but that's how you can contact your people through ACS. Okay. Questions about ACS related things? Look at that timing. It's exactly 10 o'clock.
Ooh, we're good.
All right. Very cool. All right. Questions? If there aren't any questions, I'm going to close in prayer. Thank you for coming out late at night. At some point or another, we're going to figure out a better time to do these, but yeah. That has to, we don't. Yes, it is. Yeah. Let me pray. Father God, thank you so much for these guys. As Seth says, we don't ever want them to feel like they are being overlooked or underappreciated. We literally cannot do what we do without them. So thank you for them. Father, we ask that you would be with us as we try to figure out, what is it that we can do with these people that are on our team? What are these the little small steps, the little nudges, the little words of encouragement and conversations that we can have that are going to help them to make those next steps? Because that's what we all want to do, is we want to keep growing more and more and more like you as we live and as we surrender to what it is that you want us to do, Father. So we ask that you would give us some wisdom in that area and point those ways out to us. Thank you for them again. Thank you for the time commitment that they've made tonight and as they lead their teams. We just continue to ask that you would give us great reports like the guest responses that Seth shared with us, and help us to continue to bring people closer to you. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, go to bed. Thank you, ma'am.